Rest day is back. Corinne Malcolm, happy Monday to you.
Happy Monday. I was saying before we hit record that I am quote unquote wearing hard pants today, which are just jeans. But my husband was giving me a hard time since normally I'm in like some sort of sweatsuit effectively moseying around our house.
Yeah. Wearing running apparel or warm up and cool down apparel has become the uniform of the podcasting / trail running life. So good for us. We're in hard pants today here on a rest day. And we have a hot docket. I said to you before we press record, I'm excited to chat today, Corinne.
Yeah, I think
we both have our caffeine next to us and we're ready to hit it.
I texted you last week and I was like, rest day next week. There's some big things happening right now.
Yeah, so we have a lot to talk about here. And I want to dive in with this Salomon athlete team presentation and announcement that happened, I think it was Thursday or Friday of last week. A lot to dig into here. I think maybe first, let's start with just the format of the announcement itself, and then we'll go into the performance programs, some of the athletes and stuff like that. But give me your 2 cents on how they did this announcement, because I thought it was pretty cool.
Yeah, so it basically was ahead of them all leaving to go to the island, to go to Corsica for team camp. We'll touch on team camps here in a little bit, but it felt very formal. It felt like a great utilization of HQ and headquarters and bringing all these athletes together. It kind of ties into their teams that are based in that headquarters office. So their research teams, their development teams, their scientists, etc. It also felt very corporate and like kind of like hoorah rah, Apple's new iPhone. Like all the athletes ran up one at a time in like head to toe black on black rain gear, it looked like, but it was cool. Like it looked fun. It looked exciting. Hopefully it felt exciting on the ground. They put out like a 40-ish minute video recapping it after the fact. I think they streamed it live actually on YouTube while it was going on. But yeah, it was an interesting take / like I think a general upgrade over how some of these team announcements have historically gone in the past.
It's super professional, and I think that's what they're really going for. But to your point, they did stream it live. I actually had it up live and had a hard time focusing on it. I was sort of doing other things simultaneously, and so it didn't capture my attention at the moment, but I just rewatched / listened to it. And it really caught my attention in a lot of ways. So maybe I'll give you my 2 cents here. I think, yes, what you described is totally true and, accurate in my interpretation too, in that it was, professional and corporate, and it did sort of have an iPhone moment feeling to it in that, for example, Scott Mellon, the chief brand officer, somebody who I've known a long time, who's now been at Salomon for a few years, I think has been working behind the scenes to create this hyper professional performance program. And this was almost the unveiling of it to the world, using the athlete team as the lens of like, what is Salomon doing to advance athlete performance, which then I think signals to the market like we're about innovation with our products, because ultimately at the end of the day, these athletes, their job is to sell more Salomon products. But what it also had was a huge feeling of professional cycling. And Scott even says this in the athlete presentation. He says that me and Christian Meyer, one of these international athletes, is a Canadian. We all know Christian Meyer, lives in Girona, Spain, former professional cyclist himself, former TDS champion. So knows a thing or two about professional cycling and about professional trail running. Scott makes the point that he and Christian were having dinner, sort of had this vision of bringing a professional cycling feeling to professional trail running. But what they do in cycling, Corinne, if you've ever paid attention to the Tour de France, is they do team presentations before the Tour de France starts that are almost exactly like what Salomon did. And I loved it. I loved it. So, for example, the day before the Tour de France, they'll have a 2-hour presentation where they bring all the teams up and all the athletes up. Gives a good moment for people to develop fandom for the teams, for the athletes, gives the sponsors value in exchange for sponsoring all these teams. So my feeling was this was Salomon really trying to take what works in professional cycling and apply it to professional trail running.
It felt like showmanship, right? It felt, I think that the professional cycling angle has been adopted in many ways amongst trail runners over the last like 3 to 5 years, right? Building out these more global teams, less privateering, more truly having a team essence when it comes to team camps, when it comes to getting everyone together periodically, like that has that team element to it. You know, you look at Salomon 5 years ago, Greg Valle being in that position. Greg was bringing that same sort of thing in from his experience racing mountain bikes for a long time. And so I do think that this is just a leveling up of that in a big way. And I think we're going to see more and more of that from the rest of the big hitters, the big teams that are, 20 to 30 to 40 athletes globally at all the big dogs, Hoka, Nike, Adidas, TERREX, Salomon, maybe leading the way in that regard.
Yeah. So let's come to the performance program. And I think as a good lead in here, we'll call back to one of our first rest day episodes when we were talking about the shifting team dynamics and the fact that a lot of the North American Salomon athletes were departing at the end of 2024. People like Darren Thomas, Lottie Brinks, Andy Wacker, etc. You and I sort of made the speculation of like, is this Salomon pulling back? Are they in rebuild mode? And then bang, they go public with this performance program. So I think it was clear that things were shifting on the back end and investment was moving in a new direction, which to me is like also pretty novel and innovative.
It's also not couched in like the Courtney DeWalter took the entire budget argument anymore, which I think is really important to clear the air. She is not the only American. Sophia Lockley is also on the team still. But what they did essentially is they scaled down all their national team programs to focus in on 30 athletes making up their global team, from U20 athletes, a para athlete, all the way up to their kind of like 15 or so more established global athletes. But this includes bringing athletes from Japan and China and Singapore really into the fold globally, which is a big deal. I think they've generally been on the fringe within a company like Salomon, and then building out their performance team in-house where they are doing physiological testing. I saw a sick story. I think it was on Christian Meyer's Instagram story today, where they're in Corsica right now for team camp, and he's running on a treadmill, seemingly maybe on a hotel balcony, with their chief scientist, holding the cable cording for a VO2 max test, essentially, because they're not in their official lab setting where a metabolic cart is more formally set up. So they have been building kind of the back end support for the athletes, which they've been talking about for a few years now, but it feels like it's finally really coming to fruition right now. Yeah.
It reminds me too, very much in the professional cycling lane, some of the observations that came out of this athlete presentation is like, they're all wearing the synchronized black rain suit with the fire red shoes. Like it looked like a real sports team,
which is what TERREX has been doing, right? TERREX is all about the matchy, the head to toe. Yeah. This is your competition kit. This is your award ceremony kit. This is our press kit, etc. And that seems like that is now gravitating to programs like Salomon.
I remember having a conversation with Scott Mellon about this at the North Face when we were talking about athlete kits and stuff. And I was making the point that I don't like the matchy thing of like, I want to be able to wear what I want to wear during the races and around town when you're in places like Olympic Valley and Chamonix. But I think I'm persuaded in the other direction now. Like as a sports guy and a team sports guy, I'm like, I kind of dig the whole aesthetic of it, the all black with the red. And you're right. TERREX, I think, has been a little bit ahead of the game.
But also like speaks to Rob, the head of global marketing at TERREX, comes from a triathlon background, really likes that professional look and feel to a team environment. And so there are legit mannequins in the Adidas team houses in Chamonix with like the podium outfit basically on it. Yes.
Really? Like this is what
just a reminder in case anyone knows.
So if you get confused, go look at the mannequin.
But still having variety amongst your competition kit. For example, I am a longer shorts girl, but maybe not as long as a Courtney DeWalter. You are, you're a longer shorts boy, but you could be maybe tucked into a 6-inch inseam given the right conditions. So it's like having some variety there is important, and they definitely have that. But you saw all the team pictures that came out from this press moment was in that kit, was in that colorway, was in that thing. So it looks very professional and very uniform. And so I do think that is, again, just a leveling up of the ecosystem that surrounds this very niche sport of trail and ultra running.
It's such a good point, right? Like have the uniform look, but allow each athlete to have their own style, you know? So Courtney's allowed to wear her long shorts, baggy t-shirt, but also Remy Bonnet's allowed to show the stems, you know, and wear the shorty shorts when he's ripping verticals.
Exactly.
Love it. But at the same time, you can still tell they're both Salomon athletes. Okay. So the performance program, there isn't a lot online about it, like no news articles yet. I asked Drew from Salomon North America to send me a little bit more information, but I've yet to hear back from him. But Mr. Mathieu Blanchard posted something on his LinkedIn. So I'm going to just read a little bit here as a way of, you know, going a little deeper on what we're already talking about. And you can respond here. What he says is, this is the first time in this internship, which I think is a bad translation of his partnership with Salomon. But this is the first time in my partnership that I have seen such a large investment in the sport performance program from Salomon, which is strengthening its performance team with high-level experts. Those experts are Aaron Carlson, a muscle strengthening coach, pioneer in the field of trail athletes; Paul Booth, nutritionist combining science and active trail running for optimal performance; James Forsyth, food service manager, ex-Team Sky.
Cool.
Again,
and Sky has been one of those teams that really pushed it on the science front.
Right, which Team Sky is now Team Ineos. So food service manager James Forsyth, ex-Team Sky, guaranteeing high-quality food. John Cox, experienced chef with strong track record in high performance. And Paulina, whose last name he didn't provide, a physiotherapist and carer, offering full physical and logistical support. So that would be, again, very similar to what we would see in a professional sports organization. So maybe, Corinne, you could provide your perspective on this, because it feels to me like, okay, in places like Olympic Valley and Chamonix and places that the brand deems the team needs to be at, they're going to have a robust, supportive network of individuals around them.
Which I think we, again, and I'm just speaking from TERREX experience, because that's the ecosystem I've been in for the last 6 years, was not dissimilar from what they're doing. I don't think they have they've got the physiologist in-house at headquarters, but the team interactions with them was mostly about product testing as opposed to like routine physiological testing. We'll talk more about team camps here in a bit. They just did some testing at HQ with the Adidas team. But that the physios on staff at all events, all team events for Adidas, like that's been an established factor for them, as well as splitting their managerial team into a sports marketing person, a events person, and a product person to make sure that one person isn't having to do all those things. Having the chef that they always work with at Chamonix in particular, working with a chef locally on the ground for something like Western States or Canyons. So I think the teams that are recognizing that they do want to support the athletes holistically are taking this approach. I do think that the thing that Salomon is doing here that could be extra unique is this kind of like really focused look at physiology with kind of laboratory and or team camp testing regularly, and bringing a strength and conditioning person into that mix. Adidas works with a therapist, a psychologist who is open to work with any of the athletes on the team, which is super cool. This guy named Kai. That was a really big addition to the team in the last 2 years. But I do think that we're going to see more of this kind of team level investment that goes beyond, our investment is only in the product we're providing to the athletes and the amount we're paying the athletes, and we're hoping that we're getting an ROI on it. They're really recognizing that to support the athletes to the best of their ability, they actually need to provide these other things that holistically support the athletes. And for young athletes in particular, I think that is extra important. I think older athletes in the sport who are a bit more established probably have their strength and conditioning coach, probably have a physiologist, or their coach does some of this physiological testing that they already benefit from. And so they don't necessarily need that additional support added to the ecosystem. But think about these like U20, U23 athletes that are part of the Salomon program right now, part of the 30 athletes named to this team, this global trail team. They are going to benefit immensely from having access to proper nutrition, proper physiology, proper strength and conditioning, proper like psychological help, proper therapist at events. They're not going to have to skip the little things because they can't afford it, because the team is working that into their ecosystem and team budget. Yeah.
Which means that hopefully they can develop those super young athletes into being the next generation Remy Bonnets, Courtney Dauwalters, Francois Dens. Very, very cool. And I think another thing that's similar in cycling where you have the Grand Tour teams and then you have more of the development teams that compete on, the up and coming circuits, not necessarily at the highest level internationally. A couple other things I wanted to talk about before we move on here, Corinne. Camila Jornet announced as part of this athlete presentation as the road team manager. You and I both know Camila personally, and maybe you could share a little bit about her impact on Salomon and what makes her significant.
Yeah, I'm super actually curious about this. I was watching the announcement and I see her get called up and I'm like, whoa. Like, is this not a conflict of interest? Like, her partner is pretty heavily involved with Hoka. So this seems like maybe, and then they said that she's the road team manager. And I was like, oh, okay. I see how we've like separated out the fold here a little bit as far as like a conflict of interest. Obviously, all these entities are based in Annecy, so a great place to work. But I'm really excited that they have kind of doubled down on part of their road program, because I do think that we've been worried like, hey, is Salomon going to really stay in touch with the market when it comes to super shoes and development of this kind of like higher tech product? They're such an established trail brand, but like to elevate their trail shoes, like elevating their road shoes would go a long way. And so I do like this kind of doubling down on road performance, road athletes, a marathon team, because they've loosely done that for the last couple of years. Noah Drody, notably in the US, was one of those athletes. So I'm excited to have this have an official focus within Salomon, as opposed to this kind of side hustle that doesn't really seem to be getting the attention that it deserves, that they want to be taken legitimately and seriously within the Salomon ecosystem, or within the trail and road ecosystem.
Yeah, and just to make it explicit, Camila Jornet is the wife of Vincent Bouillard, who works at Hoka and who is, of course, now the world famous UTMB champion who finished third place at Chianti, which we'll talk about briefly in a sec. But what they said in the presentation is that they have a core focus towards the 2032 Olympic Games in Brisbane, and that Camila Jornet is going to be building out the Salomon roster of people who would hypothetically have a chance at competing at those Olympic Games, which is cool. But I think always the question is, and the converse is true, like, can road brands feel authentic in trail? The same is going to be true. I think the question still exists. Can Salomon, the iconic outdoor and trail brand, be successful in the road market where people like Nike, Adidas, Asics had just a lot more experience and a lot more legacy in the mind of a consumer.
And then not included in this presser or in this press conference or in team camp, it would seem, is the change of Salomon moving into sponsoring the Milliman runners out of Africa. They had been an unaffiliated program for a number of years now, but it was announced recently on the Salomon Running Global Instagram account that they are now the title sponsor for the Milliman running group over there, which I think is a really big deal when it comes to like representing those athletes coming into trail. So curious to see what that actually means in the long run. I do think it's a great fit with the Golden Trail series being such a focus for both entities, but that was an announcement that happened maybe a week or two ago that was not included in this PR moment in Annecy before the athletes went to Corsica.
I hadn't even seen that. That's really interesting. Yeah. I'll take a look. And an important partnership if they do want to be an authentic road performance brand. But we care about trail running, Corinne. So 2 more things I just want to squeeze in here before we move on. You mentioned that Courtney is not the only American on the team. Sophia Lockley is also an American. Of course, she has been the Golden Trail World Series champion, coming off of injury last year. Of course, an Olympic Nordic skier also, but she made a comment in the presentation that I thought was pretty significant, of just sort of like that she's excited to take advantage of this performance program because she's not like a native runner, right? She grew up as a Nordic skier and she's just an incredibly gifted endurance athlete, but is yet to be like a really well-formed pure runner, which is crazy to say because she has been a Golden Trail World Series champ. So I don't know. I thought that was an interesting detail where she's like, I'm excited to take advantage of these resources so that I can become a better like runner. That was a comment from Sophia. The other piece of news that was made explicit, but that won't be a major surprise to you and I or to much of our audience, is that Courtney did make the statement that she does plan to run UTMB. Her name was on the start list, but it's always a question mark. But we heard from the GOAT that UTMB is in the crosshairs again for her. Any comments on Sophia or Courtney?
Excited to have both of them in the program. Actually, an interesting add to the team is the U21 athlete, Anela Badeau, who's similar to Sophia in the sense that she has been part of the French national biathlon team for a very long time as a junior, was a junior medalist at European champs and at the junior world champs this year. She's been on the IBU Cup, which is kind of like the minor leagues of the World Cup for biathlon. And so expecting her to be a two-sport year-round athlete as well for Salomon. So cool to see her added to the team. She won ETC last year and I think also won the half at the Marathon de Mont Blanc as well. So is like just trying trail in a big way, but is this phenomenally talented junior biathlete, which is within the French Federation. So excited to see kind of what that looks like. But the talent coming up in this outside of the established talent is really, really cool. Obviously want to see Courtney at UTMB. I do think that the men's Western States race is setting up to be the champions of champions. The women's UTMB race, I think, is setting up to be the champions of champions. So we've got a lot to be excited about this year.
Yes, we do. Closing comments. I just wanted to say it was freaking cool. Kudos to Salomon for doing it in this way. You made the comment, Corinne, and it's true that Adidas TERREX has kind of been ahead of the curve on this stuff. I wonder if Salomon making a PR event out of it might be something that other brands might be persuaded to do, because I feel like this did have like a decent cultural impact. And if Adidas is already doing all the stuff behind the scenes, why not like shine a light on it in like a digital environment to help people understand what they're doing to help their athletes be successful? And then also, I wonder, clearly, if you only have two Americans on the team, it's good to have the best Americans, Sophia and Courtney. But also it does feel like Salomon could use some more American talent. And I'm sure they're thinking about that. It's the biggest market in the world. People want to have exposure to it. It's great to have the best athletes when you only have two. But my guess is they probably will want to build out that bench of American athletes in the next couple of years.
Yeah, and it's one of those things where teams are always looking for a combination of it'll be broken down by gender, by region for them. So they look at like North America versus, their European region versus their Asian Pacific region generally. And then it's also like new names versus established names. And Salomon has spent a lot of time. They've always been about their young gun program. Like that is their thing. While they will periodically sign an established name, they really like to couch their development in developing athletes. TERREX, I think, is similar in that regard too. At this point, is that when they sign athletes, for the most part, they're going to be development style athletes because they want to grow those athletes into global talent, as opposed to periodically that they will need to make that big sign to say, hey, we do need our star North American male and our star North American female and our star European male and female, breaking it down by distance a little bit too, based on the focus of the company as a whole, ultra versus sub-ultra versus, kind of the golden trail to European off-roads and worlds and that kind of stuff. They'll break it down by that a little bit as well. But I think you're right. There is kind of a hole there on the North American side. I think, with the exit of Dakota to normal a number of years ago, I do think that really has continued to kind of create a little bit of a gap there as far as like having that current relevant star male from the US on that squad. I think there's a hole to be filled though. So I think if you're a right, very talented US male athlete, like there'll be a door.
Send an email to Vince.
There'll be a door to knock on, I think, next year. I mean, you had the, Chris Myers got signed to Brooks this year. You had Eli Hemming and Tabor leave for Adidas TERREX, now almost 2 years ago. So it's like, I think that they'll be hunting for that specific person to fill that hole next season.
Yeah. Yeah. And also alternatively, I'm thinking now back to the presentation, they do have some longtime legends who they did develop from the earliest days. People like Ryan Sands, who I think they said had been with the team for 16 years at this point. Lucy Bartholomew in her 10th year. Courtney was her first and only sponsor. Yep. And
Matthew Blanchard, basically his first and only sponsor. He came on to Salomon, I think, when I was at Salomon. And so, he's been there for almost a decade. Yeah. Lots.
And then, like Remy Bonnet too, like still not even 30, I don't think, a 6-time world champion ski mountaineering athlete. And also obviously one of the best trail runners we've ever seen. So anyway, they have done a good job of developing and nurturing that talent. And yeah, in all likelihood, they'll probably be looking to develop and nurture their next crop of great American
talent.
To
add to that, just one more thing, just to like really hammer that home, of the kind of national to global athletes they brought on. One athlete was the U23 Golden Trail winner. One athlete was the U23 Skyrunning winner. One is the U20 bronze European off-roads medalist. He is like the 5th fastest U20 10,000 meter time in all of Switzerland or something, or all of Europe. Naomi Lang, super young Scottish athlete. So most of the kind of like development tier, or most of this kind of like national to global tier, not across the board, but largely are U23s, which is essentially college aged athletes, which is, I think, very smart and very rad. And there are names that we're going to be watching for hopefully the next decade.
Yeah. And every brand right now is thinking about, how do we speak authentically to Gen Z?
Sign them.
So, okay. Amazing conversation, Corinne. That was so freaking fun. Let's move on to something that is separate but also related. That being all the team camps that people are probably seeing splashed across Instagram right now. Maybe let's stick with Salomon and then talk about the other brands. Right after this athlete presentation, it looked like the Salomon team bounced to Corsica for a little training camp. Anything you want to share there about Salomon specifically, or about this idea generally?
It looks fun more than anything. I do think that is a bigger and bigger ask of athletes from their teams. It used to be a thing that was kind of optional with Adidas TERREX, for example. And now it's very much like as mandatory as you can make it, basically. And so I do think that we're seeing kind of mandatory team camp time happening in the spring at some point. It tracks for content gathering, right? Like they are getting a ton of content right now at these team camps, so that they have stuff to add into films later in the season, to put out as new PR. I do think that it serves a number of purposes. One, it's team building. Two, it's oftentimes going somewhere warm and nice early in the season. It's harder on the North American based athletes because normally it means going to like one of the islands or getting to Europe. Easier for the European based athletes to make that hop, but it's a training camp first and foremost, but it's also about media acquisition, PR, setting up the whole season, making those connections. But it's they are fun. They are also sometimes a lot, and can definitely be exhausting.
Totally. So in addition to Salomon, TERREX just did their athlete summit too. Maybe you could provide your perspective on attending those. I'm pretty sure you did during your tenure. Specifically, they went and did meetings at HQ and then did this training camp content gathering mission, probably a lot of product testing and development on the island of Tenerife. Anything you want to share from your TERREX experience, or from the athletes in general who I know you're close with?
Actually, they're on a neighboring island. They're not on Tenerife. They're on Fuerteventura, which is a neighboring island, and it's based out of a triathlon kind of hub and camp. It's got a pool. It's got good road biking. It's got trail basically from the resort. So everything is like right there for you, and it's great. But you have to find a place that's big enough to house everyone. Feed everyone, make it all work. So that has been the location for those team camps for probably 7 years now, more or less. And what that means is that they've added this headquarters component of it that's super cool, because they actually do most of the product testing and meetings when they're at HQ in Herzo for 4 days. And then it means that they can go to camp for a week on the island. And that is more about training. That is more about training, more about team time. So you have Hannah Allgood leading strength sessions. You have people leading yoga sessions. You've got the physios there, but it's more about training time and less about product meetings. Generally at that point, they try to put that into to HQ time, because they're doing VO2 max tests in the lab. They're doing some biomechanical and metabolic testing based on different shoes. They're doing some strength testing, all that, some general health testing oftentimes as well. They do like an echocardiogram on the bike. All that is kind of like this recurring setup for the season. and then they go to camp and they just get to run. And that's kind of what Salomon's doing as well. Generally, Annecy is that like product talk, those workshops, and then Corsica.
Business in the front, party in the back.
Corsica's like, how many 20-mile runs can we go on in a row? And so the next step with that too is like how much of training at team camp is all together versus how much of it is like, hey, we've got a group doing this and a group doing that. Or we've got some people just kind of self-organizing. And so Salomon oftentimes is kind of like, they do have these big stages that they're kind of running every day. Adidas is a bit of a mix, but they have over the last 2 years set up like a schedule that the athletes actually help to set up for team camp, where they've got different athletes volunteering basically to lead different sessions. So a track session that Emily Hoggood's putting together, or a hill workout that Petter Engdahl's putting together. So a kind of a combo effect at the Adidas team camp. But yeah, business in the front, party in the back.
I bet a lot of people emerge from these team camps with a lot of fitness and a lot of motivation for the season. And like you said, a lot of content. One of the things that it just goes through my head as I see all this stuff on Instagram is like, dang, that's got to be so expensive. Right?
It's pricey. For
this Salomon team to be sent to Corsica for an entire week after they just did the time in Annecy with that massive presentation. Like, that's a huge investment from the brand into the team. Similarly with TERREX and their trip to Germany and Fuerteventura. But yeah, I mean, like, obviously that's more of an investment and they expect it to pay off. And having all these images and videos and reels splashed all over social media, it is impactful on people like me who are influenced by the athletes in the sport in terms of like, hey, what shoes that person wearing? That looks like a cool new pack, et cetera, et cetera. So they serve a number of purposes, as you already mentioned. Asics, they had their camp. It looks like it might be happening right now in Majorca, I think it is. Kraft did theirs, I think in Italy.
They were in Girona.
You said Brooks did one.
Kraft was in Girona this year. They were in La Palma last year. Girona this year. I think they were pretty cold and windy in La Palma last year. So they went to Girona this year and it looks like it was okay. Like the temperatures looked a little bit better. And then Brooks just met in Seattle, which, you know, everyone's going to these like tropical locations. And my friends that run for Brooks are like, oh, I guess we're going to Seattle. But it is where HQ is. So they spend time out in Issaquah and North Bend out on those trails. They went to Bellingham on Saturday and ran in the Chuckanuts. So for the Washington-based Brooks athletes, maybe not that exciting. But again, big meetings on campus here at the Brooks headquarters, product talks, and then training runs together. And again, content capture. Summer Kreisman, friend of Freetrail, friend of Ryan Thrower, was out doing
inventor of LF Gorge,
doing photos for them like all weekend, which was really, really cool to see. So it is, again, introducing us to the new faces of all those teams as well. TERREX put out a really cool video that I watched this morning that was of the new members of the team, effectively, like with their experience at HQ, with their experience going to the island. It's a little 10-minute video and it features our dear friend.
Is it on YouTube?
Mm-hmm. Yep. And features our dear friend.
Send me the link. I'll put it in the show notes. I haven't watched it.
It's got
Hannah
Allgood in it, so it's a good watch.
Hell yeah. Well, maybe closing comment on this. It's just popping into my head, but we need to host a team camp in Marin County, California. Speaking of sunny, nice places to go in the spring that have millions of trails right out the door, if you're an athlete manager, send your boy an email. We can get it on the books for 2026.
You're like, I will personally chauffeur you around wherever. I'll rent a minibus. We'll make it happen.
Do a live podcast at SFRC with the whole team, an athlete presentation. We'll stream it live on Freetrail. Who knows?
I like this.
You know. Sounds good, doesn't it?
Sounds really good.
All right.
Running, races.
All right. Anything else on the team camps? I think we covered a lot there, but it is cool. And it seems like more and more this time of the year, like a lot of the brands are doing it.
Yeah. So, to some degree, right? Different strategies, different whatnot. It is, I think, a marketing, like where it falls in the year and the quarter. I think it just really ticks a lot of boxes. So super cool. You can have all the FOMO you want. I think FOMO is totally appropriate when it comes to team camps. But yeah, most of those winding down as we get into race season for real.
Yeah. Awesome. All right. Speaking of racing, let's just go through some of the recent results here. You and I have not caught up since Chianti, so I got to get your take on that because it's happening, Corinne. It's freaking happening.
Yeah, it is. The men that we hoped would get in got their tickets. So we had like a semi-injured Killian and like maybe a less than 100% Vincent as well, due to being sick, I think, earlier this winter. But the guys got it done. Jim ran away with it, literally and figuratively. But Killian and Vincent got their tickets. They will be joining us at Western States in June. And they did capture really most of the media for the weekend. I think that while the women's race was incredibly good, the men's race got the coverage, got the press ahead of time, got the press kind of afterwards. But the women's battle was not without its heroes as well. And right now, though, we're kind of, I think, unless you have information that I don't have, according to the Western States website, one of those tickets is very much still pending, which means Fiona Pascal, the women's champion at that, like handedly the women's champion, is still questioning if she wants to come to Western States, which for you and I who love a good story is a little bit sad, because Fiona Pascal, for those of you who are unaware, is Beth Pascal's former Western States champion, Beth Pascal's little sister. And so we would just really love to bring this thing full circle, have Beth Pascal back in Olympic Valley crewing her younger sister, but I'm not sure if it's going to happen.
Fiona, if you are within the sound of my voice, do it. For the sake of Corinne, Malcolm, and I's ability to talk about this incredible story, do it. No, I'm just kidding. But yeah, awesome race from Fiona. And it would add an incredible storyline if she were to accept her ticket. But of course, she needs to do what's best for her and her athletic career. But yeah, Joanna Antila from Finland, awesome country to have included in the golden ticket conversation, has taken her ticket. And if Fiona decides not to, it'll bump down to Azara Garcia or potentially
I know,
Abby
which
Hall.
is like, I haven't texted Abby about it because I'm like, I can't get her hopes up. But it's like, right. I have to imagine Azara went there with the hopes of getting a ticket. I feel like she's been on the cusp before. And so that is a big question mark for me. Like, I think she actually was supposed to start CCC with the hope of going for a golden ticket. It does sound like she's been dealing with a back injury for like the last 6 months. And this was her finally feeling strong enough to run an ultra distance race. And so big, cool story on Zara Garcia if she does, in fact, get that second ticket. Curious if she will take it, if she feels like she's in a place to take that ticket. And if not, going to Abby Hall, who's come up just shy twice now, only in the matter of about 8 weeks. Would be really wonderful to have Abby Hall join Western States as well. So Fiona has...
She wants it
So
too.
Fiona's, I mean, what? Does she have like another week-ish to decide?
I think Craig usually gives 2 weeks, but he's not he's not an authoritarian with that rule. I don't believe. Don't quote me
based on what
he gives the athletes enough time to make a decision.
Based on what Beth Pascal's coach has put forward on Instagram, it really feels like UTMB is the focus of her season, and that UTMB last year went a little bit awry.
You mean Fiona?
Sorry. Fiona's focus on the season is UTMB, and that last year UTMB went a little off the rails for her. And so the whole point of the early season races in 2025 and building towards UTMB was to do races where she could kind of get the nerves out, where she could kind of put herself into relatively big stages. They went to Chianti because they knew it was a golden ticket race, hoping that the competition would be hot going after the golden ticket. So she wasn't necessarily there for the ticket. She was there for the competition.
She was there for the competition.
And so in that regard, it really does seem like UTMB is the focus and that Fiona will likely pass on the ticket. But with Azara and Abby both waiting in the wings for that ticket, I think that we will get still phenomenal athletes out of the Chianti golden ticket race.
Really interesting. I'm glad you brought that up. And yeah, either way, it'll be a worthy and deserving golden ticket recipient who will join us in Olympic Valley. Okay. Also, the men's race.
It was good.
Jim freaking ran away with it. Sick. 76-mile race with 18,000 feet of climbing in under 10 hours. That's sub 8-minute pace. I mean, dude is ready. Okay. And I just want to say, I mean, like, obviously I'm an idiot, so I can't help but think about Trail Runner of the Year and stuff already, even though it's only the last day of March. But like, we remember the race that he just did in Arizona. What was that called? Mesquite Canyon. And then he's got Chianti. And then obviously we got Tom also racing. We'll talk about him here in a second, who's already put 2 big victories on the board this season. But it couldn't have gone any better, right? Like, Jim Walmsley wins in pretty convincing fashion. And then Killian and Vincent have like a very dramatic and awesome duel that finishes in beautiful sportsmanship that makes you want to weep, only separated by 30 seconds. After Killian just had a child, Vincent proves, hey, I'm not just a one-hit wonder fluke. I'm still running with the best who've ever done it, even though you only learned my name last August. You couldn't have drawn it up any better, in my opinion.
And they were so far free of anyone chasing them too. It was a really spectacular race by all the men that were on the podium there. Okay, here's the thing though, and I don't know if you've talked to Jim about it. Was he, with his gesturing at the finish line, was that a call to breaking 14, or was that an M1 but in the wrong order? Because in a pre-race interview, someone, a European reporter, asked if he would take the ticket. And he said, I don't need the ticket. I'm M1, baby. Well, he didn't say baby.
That was the best. But
that was like,
ever.
That's the mood of this thing. So was the gesturing, was the thing, was that supposed to be M1?
I think it was M1.
I think so too. But we just got the fingers in the wrong order.
I loved it. And I saw that clip that you're referencing where this poor reporter, who I'm sure had good intentions, asked Jim Walmsley if you're going to take the golden ticket. He's like, no, actually, I've got the M1 bib, like the hottest mic drop you could ever use in an interview. Like you could see on his face, like, come on, man. Like, I'm the 4-time champion course record holder. I don't need a freaking golden ticket.
I'm already
here.
in, baby. Yeah,
I loved it.
But
I loved it. It's so good to see all three of those guys get in and all like have good races. And
Killian's so happy to not have to go to Canyons. He's so happy that worked out. Did you hear that he had a taxi booked to leave within 30 minutes of his finish time?
I did hear that.
Crazy.
Unbelievable. Dad of the year to Killian. Awesome. All right. We could spend the rest of the show talking about it, but Chianti, it couldn't have gone. Nothing could have been better. We're all now anxiously looking forward towards Western States, but still one more golden ticket race to go. We're not going to preview it here, but Corinne and I are both going to be trailgating our faces off at Canyons in 3 or 4 weeks from now for the final golden tickets. And there are some very interesting, both domestic and international athletes that will be there. Should we tag the big Alta quickly or move? I think we've sort of done a bunch of it, but it was an awesome weekend.
It looked beautiful.
Great results.
I was bummed that I wasn't there. I had FOMO from Washington.
Yeah. Okay. Well, we can skip over that, but very, very fun, amazing race. And so cool to be able to host it here in my neighborhood. Barkley, the headline there, no finishers, but John Kelly got a fun run. I don't know how closely you paid attention. It felt like sort of after last year being this massive inflection point moment in the history of the sport and the Barkley Marathons. It felt like this year it was like a little bit anticlimactic. They can't all be transcendent. This year it felt like it came and went pretty quickly, but it always is an important moment.
It seems like it was extra hard, and it seems like there was a lack of veterans, and that in conjunction with each other makes for really difficult Barkley running, just because like you don't have as many people who know exactly what they're doing. And I think that was disappointing. My biggest disappointment actually from Barkley this year was that Max King just like messed up his knee in lap 1 and was like, I think the first to drop effectively, because I do think that Max King has been putting in the work over the last 5 years to become a Barkley contender with the orienteering stuff that he does. So it's like, okay, Max King, sorry, you got to go again next year. It wasn't meant to be this year for anyone, I think, due to how many people finished last year, but it was once again a very challenging day in which the course won and no runners made it in.
Yeah. Okay. All right, well, let's talk about Tenerife. We just referenced this, but I'm coining a new term, Tomination.
Ooh,
Tom Evans dominated in that race. Notably dropping was probably his biggest rival on the start line, Dmitry Matveev. I don't know how much insight you have into how the race went down out there, but Tom won by like a 50-minute margin, which is why I said it was Tomination.
Yeah, it seems like Dmitry kind of had a rough go from the start, just didn't feel good. It seems like he's kind of going through something based on his Instagram post at this point, that he just like needs to shake it off a little bit. So back to the drawing board for Dmitry.
Yeah. Sorry, one comment on that. I loved how he was like, the most important thing in my career has always been consistency of performance. And it's like, that's the first thing that comes to mind when I think about Dmitry, is like the guy who never screws
Steady
it up.
Eddie.
So Yeah, so hopefully he gets to the bottom of what's going on and he can find that pure consistency he's always
but
had.
as a reminder to folks, Tom wasn't supposed to race Tenerife. He was supposed to race Trans-Gran Canaria and had a bit of a niggle, and so did not start that race. His wife is due imminently, I want to say. I hope that she's due imminently. I'm sure she would like to be due imminently. And so we've got a lot of guys in particular that are about to become dads for the first time in the sport right now. I'm thinking of like Caleb Olson, for example, adding to that list. And so, Tom was not supposed to do Tenerife, but needed to get, I think, one more race in before the baby is here. And, was happy to see that he was able to get it done. It seems like the conditions were kind of all over the place. The island can be really, really hot. He was also in a jacket and pants at one point. They hit the high point of the island in the race. And again, it's listed as the 100-miler, but that just falls within the UTMB qualification system where there's 100-mile qualifiers, 100K, 50K. And so like the 100K at this race was a 70K and the 100-miler at this race was like 120K. So
it's so dumb. I don't like that. Yeah. Officially, it was 68 miles with 20,000 feet of climbing. But yeah, everybody was like, Tom's running a 100-miler. It's like, no,
it's
he's
the
100-mile
segment of
category
UTMB
kind of thing. Yeah,
the long one. It's the long race. But yeah, so cool to see Tom get it done. I think that was really one of the most notable races there. There was a great race in the women's like 70K, the 100K race. Yep. Emily Hawgood charging hard, but not getting a win, which I thought was actually kind of surprising, finishing second there. But yeah, Tenerife, again, kind of a new stop on the UTMB World Series Tour, and kind of curious to see with the smattering of early season race options now, I think on every single Canary Island effectively, and add Madeira to that mix, which is right around the corner. You got your pick of which island you go to each spring.
Yeah, and then even like the Azores too, I think has a cool race in the spring too. Yeah, so final shout out to Tom. That's his second victory of the season, debuting with Asics, his new sponsor. He won the Arc of Attrition 50K or 50-miler in January. And he's about to have a kid. So 2 big victories, a new sponsor, a baby on the way, and then all sights are set on UTMB, where the guy is, I'm sure, ready to have a Tom Evans day.
He needs some redemption at UTMB right now.
He sets his mind to something, and he is not one to be denied. On the women's side, Estelle Roig from Spain won the long race in front of Linda Boldane from Latvia and Melanie Delasoy from Switzerland. Looks like Katerina also dropped out. Katerina Matieva.
A bad day for the
wife of Dmitry.
Matieva household.
Bummer. Well, anyway, yeah. I mean, it seems like every weekend there's a lot going on. Before we wind down, I got to just also give a shout out to the Boulder versus Salt Lake City feud that went down on the feed here a couple weeks ago with Matt Daniels and Adam Mary going to the Behind the Rocks 50K, I think in the Moab area, taking on Anthony Costales, who's representing the Salt Lake crew. Love to see this like friendly rivalry emerging.
I like that we can be the proponents of this friendly rivalry, because I feel like Finn sort of started it, and then Mike McMonagle got on board, and like the Boulder boys are like, we don't know what's happening, but we're here for it, and we're going to take them. And then I hope that we can really light the fire now and say that this is an official battle, and we should figure out some way to award one of the two groups a trophy at the end of the season.
Yeah. Well, Matt Daniels put together a freaking hot 50K, 3:29, beat Anthony Costales by 15 minutes. That's not easy.
And he'll be dropping down to the 50K at Canyons, it sounds like. So the Matt
Daniels,
so the men's 50K at Canyons just got even hotter though.
But why?
Because he's decided that the 50K... Because
he's been chasing a ticket.
I know. He's decided that the 50K is actually what he wants to do this year, and that I listened to the last... I'm a Boulder Boys podcast listener. Listen to the last episode. Is going to race Canyons 50K, which would set him up with a 2026 qualifier for OCC. He is still going to do High Lonesome because it is a 100-mile that he's really excited about. But otherwise, his season is really geared more towards the 50K distance, which... is him trying to, I think, align on what makes him most excited and most happy. And that's okay. We can give him the 2026 Western States push.
Okay. Well, I got to catch up on the Boulder Boys pod to be informed. But thanks for that heads up, and shout out Matt Daniels on an awesome victory. And Yeah. I mean, there's going to be no shortage of great stories at Canyons, both in the 100K with the golden tickets and in the 50K, which might be the most competitive 50K outside of OCC this season. Did you see my hilarious tweet that I put up about this rivalry?
No,
I was very proud of it.
Did you make a meme?
So Matt Baloney, who's a reporter that I follow from Puck, whose podcast I listen to, he sort of covers the media space, broke the news saying, "It's official. The Sundance Film Festival has chosen to move from Park City, Utah to Boulder, Colorado.
Yes, I did see this.
Announcement is coming soon. End of an era for America's most influential film fest." So immediately my brain said, oh my God, this is the extension of the Boulder Boys versus SLC rivalry. So I tweeted out something to that effect and it made me chuckle.
Yeah. I did in fact see that, and then I had to dig deeper into the Sundance movement thing. But I do think Boulder's a great location for it. So
yeah,
there's that.
It is the end of an era, though, man. That's tough for Park City. I'm not sure what led to that, but that's not our job. We don't cover Hollywood on this podcast, Corinne, so we don't have to have an opinion.
Yeah.
Geez,
Gorge is coming up around the corner.
Gorge is coming up.
We may rest day between now and then, but otherwise, Gorge is the next hot ticket item.
Are you coming, or are you going to Desert Rats?
We got to talk. We'll take this one offline.
Let's talk. Yeah, we should talk. Let's talk. I'd love it if you come.
Yeah, we'll get it sorted.
If you can.
No I would like to be there too. So
okay.
We got to talk to the overlords though, you know.
Okay, great. We'll talk to the overlords offline. Before we sign off, I got to give one quick shout out, Corinne. In 2011, a 25-year-old Debo drove from Aspen, Colorado to the Antelope Island outside of Salt Lake City, Utah. I ran the Antelope Island Buffalo Run 50 miler, 2011. Ran like 6:15 or something like that. It was the first race I ever won, a couple years into this trail running thing. Was over the moon. I remember calling my mom and being like, "Hey, I won the race. Can you believe it? Holy smokes." Turns out I've held that course record for 14 years. Can you believe it?
Just got broken though, hey?
It just got broken. So I was reminded, a young Alex Proctor, who I believe is a Salt Lake City guy, sent me an email or a DM like 2 weeks ago being like, "Hey, do you like have the GPX file, or do you remember your splits from this 50-mile race 14 years ago?" And of course, this is well before, Strava, and well before I even had GPS technology because I'm such a boomer. So I was like, "No, buddy, I'm sorry, but hey, go give him hell." He gave it hell. He broke my record from 14 years ago by like 5 or 6 minutes. So I just wanted to give a big shout out here to Alex Proctor, who did it rocking Freetrail arm sleeves.
I saw the photos. It's so dope.
I was so pumped to see it, and further evidence that they need to send me out to pasture. But
wait, just
awesome.
Adding to that real quick is that because we didn't talk about this on any rest day, was the fact that I texted you out of the blue the other day being like, "Yo, you were at Cayuga in 2016? We didn't even know each other then." I was like, I probably yelled at you on the out and backs in that race the entire time.
Yeah. Yeah. Ann Brady sent me an email after I had Riley on the pod saying, "Hey, do you realize that you, Riley, and Corinne were all at the 2016 Cayuga?" I was like,
no, but we should talk about this at some point.
Yeah, we should do a retrospective.
I know. I tried to find a photo of the top 10 men and women all together, and I could not. And I was like, the photo evidence doesn't exist. It's okay.
So fun. Just a fun piece of news that has relevance to me personally. So I just wanted to squeeze a little shout out to Alex Proctor.
It's super cool. I didn't know that race is a golden ticket for the Bear 100. Did you know that? Yes, if you win it, I don't know if they give out 1 ticket or 2 tickets, but it sounds like maybe it's the podium. I'm not sure. I should probably fact check myself. But I do know that he received a ticket into the Bear from it. And so it was like a golden ticket race for the Bear, which they do that with like Angeles Crest, I want to say too. And maybe Leona Divide is the golden ticket race for that. I'm making things up at this point. But I think it's kind of cool that races are doing some of that, where it's like, hey, this is a big 100 mile in our area. Let us support it by, they're going to give us a spot for the race for people to come to this 50 mile or this 100K.
Yeah. I remember it being a very cool event. So for those who are in the market for future spring races, the Antelope Island Buffalo Run. In fact, I remember I beat Duncan Callahan there, 2011, who had beaten me at Leadville the year before in 2010. And was a 2-time Leadville champion at that point. So I was like, holy smokes, I just beat the Leadville champ.
I love it so much. We were all young ones.
So fun to reminisce.
Young and hungry.
So fun to reminisce.
Winning races.
Now we're podcasters, Corinne.
We're so washed up. Oh my goodness.
An equally high performance sport, this podcast.
Okay, cut us off. Pull us out of this thing.
All right. Corinne, great to catch up. Let's touch base about
Sounds good.
soon.
Talk soon.